Hey, are you looking for an inexpensive way to lift your new Jeep Gladiator? Well, today we're going to talk about a system that's not going to break the bank, but it is going to get you up in the air. Hey everybody, it's Bubba with X's Jeeps, and we custom build badass Jeeps. When the Gladiators first came out, I had a lot of phone calls from people that wanted a suspension system for the Gladiator that they had already ordered or planning on buying or whatever. We talked it out. We had a lot of good options out there for premium suspension systems that were going to run, somewhere around the $4,000 to maybe $6,000 range installed. At the time, it didn't sound like a bad idea. So they went out and they bought the Gladiator, and then they realized how much all this was really going to cost. The Gladiator, the wheels and tires. And then they were going to come to us for suspension. And to be honest with you, they just really didn't anticipate it being so much. Some people, it didn't bother them. They went ahead and did it anyways. Some people, they backed down. So we had to find a relatively inexpensive suspension system that was decent quality, decently priced, and was going to last for a while until they could possibly afford a better suspension system. Now, that doesn't mean that the one that we're going to talk about right now isn't a good suspension system, but let's be honest, it's not something with Curry Johnny joints and King shocks. So we're going to talk about the SkyJacker 4.5-inch suspension system for the 2020 Jeep Gladiator and above. Right now, let's just go over a few of the components that are in the kit and why we chose this to be an economical suspension system for those of you that maybe can't afford the higher end or just want to put something on for a little while until they can't afford the higher end. What's great about this suspension system is it covers all the bases of what a suspension system needs to have to properly lift 4.5 inches, minus a new front drive shaft. That doesn't necessarily mean that they need a front drive shaft right away, but they will ultimately need one down the road. And we always tell our customers that if they're not swinging for a new drive shaft at the beginning, they're going to want to get one pretty soon. But back to the suspension system. It's going to come with a progressive rate spring. As you can see, the coils are wider here and narrower on top. I'm not going to go into what that means, but just know that this kit is a progressive rate spring system. More information on that, we'll do another video later on, but for now, let's keep it simple. It's going to come with new upper control arms for the rear and new lower control arms for the front. That's important because we want to correct the pinion angle in the rear and we want to keep the caster in the front as close to spec as possible. Lifting 4.5 inches, you're going to want some sort of control arm in the front to correct caster, and that's what this kit is going to do. It's also going to come with new brake lines. I believe this is for the rear. Yep. New rear brake lines, bump stops for the front and rear, and sway bar links for the front and rear. In addition to that, you're going to get a pretty nice shock. I believe this is what they call their M95. Pretty good shock, decent build, gas charged. Again, it's not a king, but it's going to work for the time being. I'm not one to put on suspension systems that I don't believe are made in America. And I'm not 100% sure where this kit is manufactured. I know the shocks are made in Mexico. I wouldn't push this kit if I didn't believe that you guys needed something out there to kind of get by until you can afford something more expensive or premium. We have installed these kits and we have driven these kits and they actually ride really, really well. It's not going to break the bank. It's going to give you a good ride quality and you're going to get up in the air where you want to be to fit some 35s. Really with the 4.5, you want to be running 37s. Heck, you can run 40s. It also comes with rear track bar brace to relocate the position of the rear track bar and an adjustable front track bar to make sure that the front stays centered. This is a good economical way to do that. That pretty much covers what's in the kit. And now the guys are going to throw it on. We're going to do some before and after measurements so that we know exactly how much lift this is going to yield. Keep in mind, the front measurements, it does have a leveling kit to get rid of the rake. So we're going to have to take some of that measurement out, but overall we'll know exactly how much this is going to net lift the vehicle. So the guys have pretty much installed everything on the truck. With the exception of the track bar, they're going to lower the truck down and get it on the ground and then bolt up the front track bar. Now, one thing I want to point out with this system is if you're going to maintain the front stock drive shaft, you're going to have some interference with the cross member here and the exhaust. You'll see that in the video. You can tell how much of an interference just by looking at the Jeep right now. This is the drive shaft and this is the flange on the front differential. And you can see how much difference it is. Maybe 3/4 to an inch in difference right there. Couple of ways of going about doing this. You can either limit strap the front, but that's a lot of work. You'd have to lift the axle up, measure where your limit strap mounts would go, account for the stretch of the strap, then bolt everything up and cross your fingers and hope you got it just right. And that would keep the axle from drooping enough to hit the front cross member and exhaust pipe right here. The other thing to do is just simply get an aftermarket drive shaft. We use Adams drive shaft a lot. They're our go-to. And that would give you enough clearance on the actual tube because their aftermarket drive shaft tubes are smaller than the stock. That give you enough clearance that the axle will be able to drop enough and allow for full droop. The other thing you can do, last but not least, is redo the exhaust, take that front cross member out, and then that'll give you all the clearance you need for this to go to full droop if you were to off-road it. This customer in particular is not going to be off-roading this Jeep. He just wanted it purely for looks. For that case, we're not too worried about it. He's never ever going to extend this Jeep that much. We're ready to set the Jeep back down on the ground, put the front track bar in, take some final measurements to see where the lift is at, and then get this customer back on the road.
Want to see a big ass donut?
This is what happens when somebody needs a favor and you tell them, hey, I'll hook you up. Just bring me a donut. They brought me a donut. So the guys are done. We've set the Jeep down on the ground. We finished installing the track bar and bolted the drive shaft back up. And so we're going to take a measurement now to see what the net lift was. So we're going to measure right here to the bottom of this yellow tape. It says 34 inches on here, but keep in mind we did have a 1-inch spacer on top of the spring that is now gone. That had a leveling kit on it. So let's take a measurement real quick. To the bottom of the tape, we're sitting at 37.5. So if we're to deduct that inch, we'd been at 33. We're sitting at 37.5. So it lifted it exactly 4.5 inches. That's pretty good because there's a lot of companies out there that advertise a certain amount of lift and sometimes you get more, sometimes you get less. Looks like SkyJacker got this one right on. The Jeep is sitting level, so now we're going to back the truck out, get the steering wheel centered back up, and once that's done, I'm going to take you for a ride and we're going to talk about the ride quality. We got everything buttoned up on here, taking it for a test drive. We took it to quite possibly one of the worst roads in town. You know, the kind that the city ignores. Yeah, full of potholes and stuff. Drove it and it's got a decent ride. Okay, I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you and say that it's any other suspension that has like King 2.5 inch or Fox 2.5 inch shocks on it. This is not that suspension. Okay, it is a economical suspension. It's going to meet certain budgets, whether that is the only suspension they can ever afford for this vehicle, or it's something that they just want to throw in there and run for a little while they save up, and then change it out for something later on. Whatever the case may be. This is a lift that is going to get you up where you need to be. It's going to do it correctly. I can tell by the way it drives that the caster is correct. So that means that those control arms that were replaced were correct. Expect to pay somewhere in the neighborhood of $600 to $800 for the installation, depending on the shop. You may do better than that. You may do better on the retail price of the product if you negotiate with your shop too. I know that that's sometimes a thing. We do it often. But yeah, we're gonna get this back to the shop, cleaned up, and hand it back over to the customer. I think it looks good, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to hit you up later on. All right, brother. Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
You wanna see more cool videos about Gladiators and lifts? Click here, and I'll see you over there.